Today, we're going to talk about indies, indie comics, indie publishers. What is exactly an indie comic? What is exactly an indie publisher? There's a lot of confusion on the market. There's a lot of people who are calling this publisher an indie publisher, this publisher an indie publisher, and they're not. There are also people who simply haven't updated their files and think that a publisher which was once indie is not anymore. Who is what, who does what. This is what we're going to talk about today. My name is Fabrice Sapolsky. I'm your host. This is Fave Fridays, the return. Hit it. Before we start, a little bit of shameless promotion because, hey, why not? This is my channel. I decide I do whatever I want. So I want to talk about three things. One, FairSquare Comics, my publishing company, has two new titles on stands that was just released. A Fox in My Brain from the fantastic Lou Luby. And let me tell you, this book is flying off shelves. I'm actually shocked and surprised because the market is not really good. I've said it multiple times, but this book is selling. People love it. It's absolutely amazing. It's killer. It's about mental health. It's smart. It's beautiful. It's great. I love it. I mean, of course, I love it. I published it. Bugs in My Brain. And the one which is coming starting May 22nd is Kiem. Kiem is also a book that I fell in love with. It's from the Fam Morissette family. The Fam Morissette family, they actually took their own histories, three generations of women plus one guy, Jibril. Jibril is known for his work at Marvel and Image and Humanoids, and he's drawing, and his sister Yasmin is writing, and they're telling their family story, and it's moving. It's from Vietnam to North America. It's really a wonderful book, an amazing book. It will be in stores starting Wednesday, May 22nd in comic book stores, and 2 weeks later, everywhere else, everywhere books are sold. And the third thing, and I want to say, like right now, this is the thing that I'm probably the most proud of. FairSquare Comics got its first Eisner nomination today. It was announced today, and it's for this book, A Boy Named Rose. Boy Named Rose has been a constant success for us in the past year since we published it first. I think it came out in June of last year. It's currently sold out, but we're sending the book back to print. Actually, we were inspired to wait for it because now we can say it's an Eisner nominated book on the cover, which we will. The ceremony for the Eisner Awards is going to be held at the San Diego Comic-Con Festival this summer. And I won't be there, unfortunately, but I hope we win. Fingers crossed. Now, let's back to our program. This is going to be fun today. All right. First, let's set the contours of what we're going to talk about today, as it can be a little bit complicated. We're going to take a look at comic book companies and classify them by their nature. We have 5 categories. Corporate, meaning that these companies are not independent. They are fully integrated as business units in big ensembles. Corporate venture capital is for companies that have welcomed corporations in their capital as shareholders, but the influence of said corporations varies from one company to another, and also varies from no interference to very high interference. Editorially, these companies are usually independent, but we've seen some very much influenced by their investors. They're usually here to stay long term. The third category is venture capital / angel investors. These are private backers, business angels, or institutional funds that are seeking a good return on investment. Why did they choose comic? I don't know, but this is it. They invest for a reasonably short period of time, 3, 5, or 10 years, and expect to make money in the process. Their influence on editorial is usually inexistent. That's why they're called silent partners. Usually they're silent partners. Then we have public traded company, and I think that is pretty much self-explanatory. Those companies are traded at the stock exchange. Anybody can be a shareholder, and there are not that many, but they still exist. And then we have privately owned company, and here we're talking about companies that are owned by individuals, families, or a group of friends. They are usually LLCs or S corp. They are the true and undisputed independent companies. Now, who's what? And I'm sure you're dying to know. So without further ado, let's take a look at all the companies. Let's start with Boom Studios. Boom Studio is a corporate venture capital type. They've consistently raised money for over a decade. They have 7 major investors, unless there are some that are hidden. They completed their last round of investment in 2020. The Los Angeles-based company can count on a few venture capitalists like Touchdown Ventures, RPN Venture, or Gideon Hexen Fund. I don't know any of those. Disney is also one of their minority shareholders. Why? Because initially it was Fox. 20th Century Fox was originally one of their shareholders. The 20th Century Fox has been sold partly to Disney. That part has been absorbed. So now Disney is one of their minority shareholders. Are they considered independent? That's what you want to know. And the answer is yes. Boom Studios is an independent company. Absolutely. They still make the decisions. And even though they have these big investors, they are editorially independent. Now let's move to Dark Horse. Historically, Dark Horse has been an independent publisher. It's been created and owned by Mike Richardson and created in 1986. It's a very old company. But in 2022, it was acquired by Embracer Group, which is a Swedish company with a large portfolio in video games, collector's items, and entertainment. Are they independent? No, no, not anymore, because it's now part of an international group and cannot be considered an indie publisher anymore. That's sad. I know a lot of people thought that Dark Horse was like the mother of independence or the father of independence. It is not the case. Okay, let's switch to another publisher, and this one is Dynamite Entertainment. Dynamite Entertainment is technically a subsidiary of Dynamic Forces. Dynamic Forces was, I believe, Nick Barucci's historic company. First company founded in 1992. And initially, it was mainly a variant cover company. Dynamic Forces was like paying artists big bucks to create these collector variants, and were selling it. They were a pioneer in the variant cover business. And Dynamite Entertainment was only founded in 2004. It is a very, very private company. Like, we don't know much about their shareholders. We don't know much about their business. They're again very private. But I'm pretty sure that Nick Barucci, the founder, still owns the majority of the shares. So that's a real independent right here. So yes, Dynamite is an independent company. Absolutely. Now, Titan Publishing. Of course, a lot of people in the United States don't really know much about Titan. But Titan is a independent Titan, like pun intended. It spun off the British retail chain Forbidden Planet. You may have heard about them. The founder, Nick Lando, has been in the comics business for over 50 years. And in 1993, he partnered with Vivian Chung to create a larger business. They still run the group to this day. Like Dynamite, they have bet on licensed magazines and comics. And it has been a very good move for them. But yes, they are still independent. They are still owned by an individual in this case too. Let's move to the case of IDW. IW, which stands for IDN Works, ID plus Works. I don't know how you pronounce it. Very interesting, actually. It was originally founded in 1996 as an independent venture. The company was then acquired in 2007 by the IDT Group. IDT Group morphed the company into IDW Media Holdings. And at one point, they took the company public. As a result, anyone can own a share of IDW. Obviously, between the corporate and the public trading sides, this company cannot be considered independent at all. So this is a no, folks. IDW is not an independent company. Mad Cave. Mad Cave was founded by Mark Irvin and Mark London in 2014. And this is another privately held company. Their strategy is, again, close to the one Dynamite and Titan are using, betting heavily on licenses with a bunch of creator-owned graphic novels around that. And despite this choice to lean heavily on licenses, especially recently, it is an independent company. So yes, you can buy independent when you buy Mad Cave. Oni Press. Oh, that's an interesting one. So Oni Press was originally independently owned, but it's been absorbed by the company called Polarity Media in 2019, merging it with Lionforge, which was Polarity's publishing arm. The merger, Oni Lionforge, is technically editorially independent, but many sources have stated that Polarity Management keeps an eye on what's going on there. For a couple of years, there was a lot of coming and goings in the editorial personnel. Recently, the company seems to have found somewhat of stability, but Polarity Media, being a group that includes animation and other activities, it's hard to fully consider them as a independent, as like a straight independent. Oni Lion is clearly a business unit, a branch of the Polarity Corporation, and takes orders from them. There will be debate, but to me, this is not an indie in the strict sense of the term, of course. So I'm sorry, Oni Lion. You look indie, but you're not. And now, drum roll, we're going to talk about Image Comics Inc. Image is the most fascinating of this list because technically, Image is not one company. It's a group of 5 companies grouped under a single publishing umbrella. And the realities are very different from a partner to another. Top Cow, Todd McFarlane Productions, and Shadowline are all privately owned companies. Their owners still operate their respective companies, even though Jim Valentino, who is the creator of Shadowline, is, I think, somewhat retired. And Eric Larson, who is one of the founders, but only publishes his own comic, Savage Dragon, doesn't really operate as a full label, as a full company. I mean, I'm sure he has a LLC, but it's not considered as a, he's a partner, but it's not considered as a main label. It still only displays the I logo on the cover. But that's the case of Image Central. Image Central is basically everything else. And Image Central is led by Eric Stevenson, both a partner and the person that allows all this production to happen, because under him and his team, all the production for every Image books is done, is achieved. Um, so it's both an engine and its own label. Very interesting state for this portion of the company. And then there's Skybound. Yes, Skybound. This is the biggie. This is the elephant in the room. Skybound is now a multi-million-dollar company. There are like 7 owners for Skybound, most of them venture capitalists and investment funds. Skybound also invested itself in 2 companies, Telltale Games and Mega Cat Studios, in 2023. They've also pivoted their model to a largely work for hire or co-shared IPs with talents, breaking the traditional full creator-owned model popularized by Image. And I mean, the creator, like let me make a side note here. We're not talking about creator-owned in this video. Creator-owned will be another complete video, because I find it fascinating that even companies that are like, it's there's a very indie company doesn't mean creator owned. These are very different topics. So you have a lot of indie companies that are doing full work for hire. You have a lot of indie companies that are doing creator owned. Like it doesn't. It's not related. These are two different topics. So we're going to treat them separately. The purpose of this video is to talk about the status of the companies as independent publishers or not. So anyhow, Skybound is clearly becoming a giant, a corporation that will soon be able to produce or co-produce their own movies if they're not doing it already. Um, Technically, they can still be considered independent as they are not listing any big corporation as their investors. But for how long? Like a big company like that, which develops so fast, um, always needs more cash, needs more investors, and Skybound is also the biggest studio at Image. Arguably, like I think Robert Kirkman, who created and operates Skybound with his team, uh, he doesn't really need Image. So I think he's staying in the cooperative in the structure for sentimental reasons, but they could be their own publishers. Um, Anyhow, at this rate, growth is inevitable. And the bigger the company gets, the bigger the partners are going to be. So at one point, right now, Skybound is still independent, and thus Image is also considered an independent company, or an independent group of companies. But how long will it take for one of them, presumably Skybound, to break that uh, association and become its own entity? I could talk about the other smaller companies like Humanoids, which I know well because I work there, and which is an independent company on both continents. Like they're independent both in France and in the United States, with the main owner um, having 88%, I think 88% of the shares of the company. So yes, they are independent, owned by the majority of their shares owned by one person, and other smaller labels. I think you get the idea. One word about the corporate companies, and we established that there are business units in bigger groups, and by that I mean like companies like Marvel Comics and DC Comics, which are respectively owned by Disney and Warner Brothers. Um, it, these companies started as independent, so and it's interesting to see that uh, for a long time, not so much DC, but for a long time, Marvel saw themselves as uh, David against Goliath. Being DC Comics, because DC was always bigger, and it's very interesting that now it's kind of like the opposite, because they're part of a bigger group. Disney is a bigger group than Warner Brothers. So it is fascinating that for a very long time, even though I think Marvel became a corporation in the 70s, they were first acquired by Cadence Corp in the late 60s or early 70s. They still had this mentality of we are the independent, we are the other guy, even though it was not true. Um, it's only when the shift happened with Disney that it was fully understood by everyone at the company that they were part of this large group, because for the first time you had a multimedia entertainment giant that was owning the company, as opposed to another company that may have done a lot of different things that were not entertainment. Um, but the vertical integration of Marvel, just like DC, even though um, it's not as successful yet, maybe it will be, prove that this is a model that works for them. So it's really interesting to see that at the root of our industry, it's all independent, and so it's no surprise that the debate of who is independent, who's not independent, still rages on. And if you visit any comic book store on a Wednesday and you get caught in a conversation between fans, that still exists, fortunately, and that's the vitality of our world, of our business. Some fans will consider this more indie and some of the non-indie. It's also very interesting to know that as creators, we navigate between those worlds. A lot of creators are going from independent to corporate to back to independent, and it's absolutely uh, no surprise that IDs like kind of like move from a sphere to another sphere between corporate and independence. It's just after that, once you said that, the question of ownership, and that's what I was hinting about when I was talking about the creator-owned status. Um, that comes into play at this time. That comes into play, but that's the subject of another video. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video and the previous videos and hopefully the next videos, don't hesitate to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Thank you very much. I've been Fabrice Sapolsky. This was Fave Fridays. Thank you.